A wedding tent stands in a small village called Cana, strung with olive branches, crowded with relatives, running out of wine 3 days too early. You can imagine the panic behind the kitchen curtain. A host's family name about to be ruined in front of the whole town, and one woman notices before anyone else does. She is older now, the mother of a grown son, and she walks straight up to him and says 4 words. They have no wine. Her son looks at her and answers in a strange, formal way for a mother and child. Woman, why does this concern me? My hour has not yet come. It sounds almost cold when you first hear it. It is not. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why. Because that word, woman, spoken by Jesus, is going to follow you through this entire story, all the way to the last thing he ever says to a woman from a cross. This is not a video about romance. This is not a video about gender roles in the ancient world. This is not a checklist of Bible trivia to impress someone at church. This is a walk through every conversation Jesus has with a woman in the 4 Gospels, and a pattern hiding inside all of them that first-century readers would have found shocking. Some readers still do. You need to understand the world this happened in first. In first-century Jewish culture, a rabbi did not speak to a woman alone in public, not even his own wife, in front of others. It was considered beneath his dignity, even scandalous. Some rabbinic teachers of the era went so far as to say a man who spent too many words on a woman was wasting time better spent studying the law. The Jewish historian Josephus, writing in that same century, records that a woman's word was not even trusted enough to stand on its own as legal testimony, because of what he calls the impulsiveness of her sex. That is the water Jesus was swimming in every single day of his public ministry. Keep that in your mind as you watch what he does anyway, because it changes everything you are about to hear. Take the woman at the well in Samaria. It is noon, the hottest part of the day, exactly when a woman with a reputation would come to draw water alone, when no one else is there to whisper. Jesus is sitting by the well, tired from the road, and he speaks first. "Will you give me a drink?" She is stunned. Jews did not associate with Samaritans. Men did not speak to unaccompanied women. And yet here he is, asking her for a favor. The conversation that follows is the longest one-on-one conversation Jesus has with anyone in the entire Gospel of John, longer than with any of his own disciples. He tells her about living water that will make her never thirst again. He tells her, without her saying a word about it, that she has had 5 husbands and the man she is living with now is not her husband. And instead of shrinking back in shame, she asks him a real question about worship. Jesus answers her plainly. Then he tells her something he almost never says directly to anyone in this gospel. "I who speak to you am he, the Messiah." Said first, not to a priest, not to a Pharisee, not even to his own disciples, to a Samaritan woman with a complicated past, at a well, at noon. Here's what most people miss about this story. She runs back into the same town that judged her, and she becomes the first evangelist in the Gospel of John. Many people in that town believe in Jesus because of what she tells them, before they ever meet him themselves. Now go to a crowded street, bodies pressed together, a woman edging through the crowd who has been bleeding for 12 years. 12 years. Under Jewish law, that made her ceremonially unclean, untouchable in the most literal sense, likely cut off from her own family's table. She has spent everything she owns on physicians and only gotten worse. She does not ask Jesus for anything out loud. She just thinks, if I can only touch the edge of his cloak. She reaches through the crowd. She touches it, and immediately the bleeding stops. Jesus stops walking. Who touched me? His disciples think it's a strange question. Dozens of people are touching him in a crowd this size. But Jesus knows something happened. And the woman, trembling, comes forward and falls at his feet in front of everyone and tells him the whole truth. This is the moment he could have scolded her for touching him while unclean, for breaking the law in public. Instead, he says one word first. Daughter. It is the only time in the 4 Gospels Jesus calls a woman by that word. Not woman, not you, daughter. Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. Stay with me, because this same day gets even harder. Before the bleeding woman ever reached him, Jesus had already been asked to come heal a synagogue leader's 12-year-old daughter who was dying. By the time he arrives at the house, she has died. The mourners are already wailing. Jesus walks past all of it, takes the girl's cold hand, and says 2 words in Aramaic that Mark's gospel preserved in the original language, because they mattered enough to keep exactly as spoken. Talitha koum. Little girl, get up. And she does. Now walk into a dinner party at the home of a Pharisee named Simon. Jesus has been invited, which was rare on its own. Pharisees did not usually eat with someone they suspected of breaking their rules. In the middle of the meal, a woman the text only calls a sinner, likely meaning a prostitute, or at minimum someone with a publicly ruined name, walks in uninvited. She kneels behind Jesus at his feet, crying so hard that her tears are wetting his feet. She wipes them with her own hair, in front of every guest at that table, and pours expensive perfume over him. Simon is disgusted. He thinks to himself, if this man were really a prophet, he would know what kind of woman is touching him. Jesus, who apparently reads thoughts as easily as he reads scripture, tells Simon a short story about two men who owed money and were both forgiven, and asks which one will love the moneylender more. Simon answers correctly. Jesus turns it back on him. She has been forgiven her many sins. That is why she has shown such great love. Then he speaks to her directly, in front of everyone who came to that dinner specifically to judge her. Your sins are forgiven. The other guests start murmuring, who is this who even forgives sins? And Jesus, ignoring them completely, says the last thing to her. Your faith has saved you. Go in peace. Now watch what happens next, because this one is about who gets to decide when mercy is allowed. Jesus is teaching in a synagogue on the Sabbath when he notices a woman who has been bent over for 18 years, unable to fully straighten her back, crippled by what the text calls a spirit that has kept her bound. He does not wait for her to ask. He calls her forward in front of the whole congregation and says, Woman, you are set free from your infirmity. He puts his hands on her, and immediately she stands up straight and starts praising God out loud. The leader of the synagogue is furious, not moved. He tells the crowd there are 6 other days for healing, and this is not the day for it. Jesus answers him directly. If you would untie your ox or your donkey on the Sabbath and lead it to water, should not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, bound for 18 years, be set free on the Sabbath too? His opponents are humiliated. Everyone else in the room starts celebrating. 4 women down, and you can already see it. The well, the crowd, the dinner table. Every single time, Jesus speaks directly to a woman his culture told him to walk past. If you're seeing that pattern too, hit subscribe now, because it is about to get a lot bigger than personal shame. It is about to cross into territory Jesus was never supposed to enter at all. Here's the part nobody tells you. Jesus does not only cross lines of gender and reputation, he crosses lines of nationality too. And this next encounter is the most uncomfortable one in the Gospels, on purpose. A woman from the region of Tyre and Sidon, a Gentile the text calls a Canaanite, comes to Jesus shouting for help. Her daughter is severely tormented by what the Gospel calls an unclean spirit. At first, Jesus does not answer her at all. His own disciples ask him to send her away because she will not stop shouting. Then Jesus says something that sounds shocking out of his mouth. I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. She keeps coming. She kneels in front of him. Lord, help me. Jesus says it again, sharper this time. It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. In that culture, calling a Gentile a dog was not a passing insult. It was the standard slur of the day. And here is where this woman does something nobody else in the Gospels does. She does not argue with the insult. She works inside it. Yes, Lord, but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. Jesus stops. He looks at her and says, Woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted. Her daughter is healed in that exact moment, from a distance, without Jesus ever laying a hand on her. There's one more thing about that exchange most people miss the first time. Of everyone Jesus meets in the Gospels, priests, Pharisees, his own disciples, he only uses the words great faith twice. Once, for a Roman soldier. Once, for this Gentile woman his own culture had trained him, socially, to walk past. But it gets stranger, because not every woman who speaks with Jesus is a stranger with nothing to lose. One of them is the mother of 2 of his own disciples, James and John. She comes to Jesus, kneels down, and asks him for a favor before he even says what it is. When he does ask, she says it plainly. Let one of my 2 sons sit at your right hand and the other at your left, when you come into your kingdom. It is an ambitious, maybe even embarrassing request, asked in front of a crowd by someone who should have known better. Jesus does not rebuke her the way you might expect. He answers her directly, and gently. "You don't know what you are asking." Then he turns to her sons and asks whether they can drink the cup he is about to drink, meaning suffering, not status. They say they can, not fully understanding what they have just agreed to. It is an uncomfortable story, and Jesus does not pretend otherwise. But notice, again, he does not talk about her to someone else in the room. He talks to her. Now the stakes climb again, from a sick daughter to an actual funeral. Jesus and a large crowd are walking toward a town called Nain when they meet another crowd walking the opposite direction. A funeral procession. The dead man is a widow's only son. In that world, a widow with no husband and no son had almost no way to survive, no income, no protection, nothing. She has just lost her only source of safety in the world, and Luke's gospel says Jesus saw her. Not the crowd, her. He walks up to a total stranger burying her only child and says 2 words, "Don't cry." Then he touches the coffin, which would have made him ceremonially unclean too, on purpose, and says, "Young man, I say to you, get up." And the boy sits up and starts talking. Luke records what happens next in one plain sentence. Jesus gave him back to his mother. Now go to the house of 2 sisters, Martha and Mary, in a village called Bethany. Their brother Lazarus is dead, 4 days in the tomb, which mattered in that culture, because Jewish tradition held that the spirit lingered near the body for 3 days before finally leaving. 4 days meant everyone watching believed this was permanent, no exceptions, no chance. Martha reaches Jesus first on the road, and she does not hold back. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." It is grief and accusation in the same breath. Jesus tells her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha, thinking he means the future resurrection at the end of time, says, "I know he will rise again, in the resurrection at the last day." And Jesus says something that changes the whole conversation. "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die." Then he asks her directly, "Do you believe this?" And Martha, grieving, exhausted, 4 days into burying her brother, gives one of the clearest declarations of faith in the entire New Testament. "Yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God." Then Mary comes out, falls at his feet, and says the exact same accusing sentence her sister said. This time, Jesus does not answer with theology. John's Gospel says it in 2 words, the shortest sentence in the whole Bible. Jesus wept. Pay attention to this, because it matters. Jesus already knows he is about to raise Lazarus from the dead in the next few minutes. He is not weeping because he is helpless. He is weeping because Mary is standing in front of him. Grief does not require ignorance of the ending. Sometimes it only requires love for the person standing in the middle of it. He walks to the tomb, and in front of both sisters and the whole crowd of mourners, he calls a dead man by name. "Lazarus, come out." And a man 4 days dead walks out, still wrapped in his burial cloths. That is the highest stakes anyone has faced in this video so far, and it is not even the climax. Now go back to that word from the very beginning. Woman. Jesus said it to his mother at a wedding, and you might have thought it sounded cold. Now go with her to the one place a mother should never have to stand, at the foot of a cross, watching her own son die by execution. John's Gospel says that Jesus, in almost unbearable pain, looks down at her one more time and says the same word. "Woman, here is your son." Then he says to the disciple standing next to her, "Here is your mother." In the original Greek, that word Jesus uses both times, gynai, is not a term of distance at all. It is closer to what you would use for a woman you deeply respect, sometimes even a term of tenderness. Jesus opened his ministry with that word at a wedding, promising his hour had not yet come. He closes it with that same word, from a cross, at the exact hour it finally has. 3 days later, before the sun is even fully up, a woman named Mary Magdalene walks to Jesus' tomb and finds the stone rolled away and the body gone. She runs and gets 2 of the disciples. They look, they leave. She stays behind, crying outside the tomb. She looks in and sees 2 angels, who ask her, "Woman, why are you crying?" She turns around and sees a man she assumes is the gardener. He asks the exact same question. "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you are looking for?" 3rd time that word appears in this story, and this time, it is the whole point. She still does not recognize him. Grief does that. It can put you 3 feet away from the exact person you are looking for and let you see nothing at all. Then he says one word, her name, Mary. And in that instant, She knows. She turns and answers him in Aramaic. Rabboni, which means far more than teacher. It carries the weight of my great one, my master, something closer and more personal than the more common word rabbi. You know that feeling, maybe in a crowded airport, or a hospital waiting room, or a house full of strangers at a funeral, when someone says your name in a voice you would know anywhere, and every wall you were holding up comes down at once? You do not need a paragraph of proof in that moment. You do not need someone to argue you into believing it is really them. One word does it. That is this moment for Mary, standing outside an empty tomb, wrecked with grief, 3 feet from the one person she thought she had lost forever. She is not convinced by an argument. She is undone by her own name, spoken in the one voice on earth that could say it like that. And here is where that historical detail from earlier matters. Remember, in first-century Jewish culture, a woman's testimony was not considered reliable enough to hold up in court. If 4 different writers were inventing a resurrection story to convince a skeptical world, the last thing any of them would choose is a woman as the very first witness. Yet that is exactly what all 4 Gospels record. Mary Magdalene, not Peter, not John, not any of the 12, is the first person Jesus speaks to after he rises, and the first person he sends out with the news. Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. The first sermon ever preached about the resurrection of Jesus Christ was preached by a woman, to men who at first did not believe her. So what do you do with all of this? 3 things, and the third one is the one I actually want you to sit with. Takeaway 1. Across the 4 Gospels, Jesus has recorded conversations with at least 11 different women: Samaritan, Jewish, Gentile, married, unmarried, sick, sinful, bent over for 18 years, ambitious on behalf of her sons, grieving and grieving again. And in every single one, he speaks to her directly, not around her, not about her to someone else. Takeaway 2. Not one of those women had to clean herself up first. Not the woman with 5 husbands. Not the woman bleeding for 12 years. Not the woman crying on his feet in a room that despised her. He spoke before the fixing happened, not after. Takeaway 3, and this is the one that matters. This is not a story about ancient customs. This is not a story about first-century culture. This is not a story about gender in the Bible. This is a story about whether the God of the universe still speaks first to the people everyone else has already stopped looking at. If that is you today, however that looks for you, he already has a word for you. He has used it before. So tell me, out of every woman in this video, which conversation would you have wanted to be standing close enough to hear? Put her name in the comments, and tell me why that one hit you. Because the same voice that said her name at that tomb is not finished saying names.